Morning, everyone. Hello, hello, hello. I hope everyone had a super fun time last night. I'm looking around the room and I think there's some that had a lot of fun last night. And then the ones that aren't here yet, but I'm sure they'll be popping in. I just want to welcome everyone to the One Record training. I think you've got some really good content with some really good leaders to talk about this to you. I just want to take a quick moment before handing it over to thank our sponsors. I'd like to start by thanking our host airline, LATAM Cargo. Thank you very much. I just want to remind everyone about Airbus sponsoring the AI-powered content summaries. It's pretty neat. I'll just leave that up if you've not scanned it yet. And then next, we've tried this too and it works very well, the translation app. Okay. All right, so with that, I'm going to introduce Dr. Davide Eloci. Have a great training, and I'll check in with you in a couple hours. Thank you.
Thank you, Jonathan. First of all, I would like to thank you. After 2 days of talks and the gala dinner, you are still here at 9 in the morning for One Record training. So definitely you want to know more about One Record. So my presentation will be about the technical of One Record. My name is Davide Eloci. I'm the API development lead in the digital cargo team at IATA. But before introducing you in the presentation, I want to give you an idea of the agenda today. So this is a One Record training. I will start giving you some technical foundation for One Record. And the idea is mostly to give you the ideas behind One Record. Because without understanding a few ideas, then it's a bit hard to understand use cases and so on. The second presentation will be by Dr. Philippe Billon, Lufthansa Cargo. And the idea is to bring you use cases about One Record. It's going to be use cases that the Digital Leadership Charter has defined, and you will see how we can use One Record in real life. And it's always nice to talk about use cases, technical foundation, and so on, but it's much more interesting to see things live, to see demo, to see how One Record actually works. And at the last, Niklas Scheibe from Champ Cargo System will show you super nice demo. And there will be even a bit of AI, but I don't want to spoil more. So with that, we start. First of all, I want to introduce you to the concept of One Record. So the essence behind One Record is really to move from a peer-to-peer messaging model to a data sharing model. The idea behind is that in a peer-to-peer world and in a messaging world, what you do is that you send information from stakeholder A to stakeholder B to stakeholder C and so on and so forth. And this, you have rekey, you have information that they are missing, they are truncated, and when there is an issue, you need to go back the chain until you find the producer of the information to fix this problem. Now, if we move to data sharing and if we move to One Record, the idea is pretty different. You are directly connected with the producer of the data. So whenever there is an issue, what you need to do is to contact the producer and get back the information. And maybe it's not about an error. Maybe you ask why certain data points are in a certain way, why a description is missing. You have a direct connection with the person that produced the data, and you can ask questions about the data. So that's the first concept. This, I think, is the most important slides of the presentation. And there are 3 important concepts inside these slides. First of all, One Record is a standard. It's not a server, not a system, not a database that we have in IATA. It's just a standard. It's basically a set of rules that we define at IATA with our community, with our working group, and define specific way to share data. There are 2 other important concepts here. First, a unified data model. It's our way to talk. It's our dictionary. It's a way that we exchange information. And then the information is shared through a standardized web API. The idea is how we share information. There is a standardized web API that allows us to share information. So 3 key concepts. One Record is a standard. It defines a data model and use a standardized web API. let's go a bit deeper. What are the three pillars of one record? As I said, data model, API and security, and then orchestration. What they are? Data model is our dictionary. It's a set of words that we can use. So if we make an analogy with our language, the data model is basically what we can use to talk. API, and then security. API is the way we talk, the way we exchange the information. If we are at the phone, the channel of the information is basically the phone. But here we use API. It's the way we transform or transmit the information across different systems. And then orchestration, that's very important because when you have words and you have a way to move the words, you need to put them in a certain way for the other people to understand. And then grammar is what it is about, and orchestration is what it's about. It tells you how you should use API and data model to achieve a certain business process. So these are the three fundamental pillars, and I haven't talked too much about security, but of course security is embedded in our daily life, so it's part even of one record. So now I want to introduce another important concept that has been introduced many times actually in this conference, and is the digital twin. What actually is a digital twin? It's fairly easy. Digital twin is simply a digital replica of our physical entity. If you think about it, when you create your avatar in a website, that's your digital twin. It's your digital representation in the system. And one record uses actually this digital twin to represent any physically distinguished object. Whether this is a shipment, whether this is a piece, like we have a real shipment, is a physical object, and then we get all the data, we put it in our digital twin, and we say the shipment has a specific goods, specific pieces, has a specific dimension. This is our digital representation of something that exists in our real life. Now, how we do it in one record? I said we use digital twin, but how we represent them? Digital twin in one record, they are represented by logistic object. And logistic object is the fundamental of one record. It's like the foundation of one record. So logistic objects are digital representation of many different things: ULD, aircraft, pieces, waybill, addresses. Whatever you have in cargo, we represent it in logistic object. And where are we getting the list of the logistic object? Is through the data model. The cargo data model defines the list of logistic objects that are possible, and not only that, even the properties. So it will tell you, if you have a shipment, you can define the dimension, the description, and so on. And you can link it to a piece, and you can link it to a waybill, and so on and so forth. That's really a key concept. Now, how they look like? Well, they look like that. This is pure data. This is a representation of a logistic object. It's not nice for our eyes. It's not done for a human. It's just pure data. But then, this is a logistic object visualization. They have the exact same data. But for a human eye, the second is much better. There is an ID, there is a goods description, there is a piece. The first one is very hard to understand, but it's purely digital data. And actually, it's what is used everywhere in your life when you download something or you basically go to a website. Now, let's go a bit further and let's make the first analogy of this presentation. We can say the logistic objects, they are like Wikipedia pages. I'm pretty sure you are familiar with Wikipedia. You know what Wikipedia is. I'm pretty sure you have been in Wikipedia many different times. And I can tell you that logistic objects are very, very similar to Wikipedia page. And now I'm going to try to convince you. First of all, logistic object, Wikipedia. Let's see. Our shipment logistic object, he has a URL, and there is a description of all the things that there are in the shipment. Wikipedia page. Well, this is a Wikipedia page of Leonardo da Vinci. It has a URL. It has some data inside. They look pretty similar. And actually, each logistic object has a URI or a URL, and each Wikipedia page has a URL or URI. You can take it, put it in your browser, and you get all the information about the Wikipedia page. Same for a shipment. If you have the ID, the unique ID of the shipment, which is actually a URL in this case, you put it in your browser, and with some security measures, you get all the information of it. It can be pure data, it can be a visualization that you can build, but that's really how it's gonna be. Let's move forward. Logistic objects, they have an audit trail and a version control. Basically, each time you change something in a logistic object, you announce the version number or the revision number. So it goes from 1 to 2 to 3 and so on. And between different versions, you have an audit trail. So you know exactly what changed between version 2 and version 1. So you can do comparison. In Wikipedia, it's exactly the same. If you go to the revision history of Leonardo da Vinci, there are all the different versions. They have all different names, or let's say IDs, and you can actually check the difference between the two. So exactly the same. Again, let's move forward. Change request. So to change a logistic object, that can happen, you need to create a change request, which is basically a request to say, I have a certain description, I don't like it, I need to update it. This is the new value. Can you please update the logistic object? And the holder of the logistic object can accept it or reject the modification. Now, in Wikipedia, it's exactly the same. You can log in Wikipedia, you say, well, I think Leonardo da Vinci was not Italian. You send it, and most probably the community will decide whether to accept it or not. It's exactly the same. Now, the idea is that actually using one record, we could actually rebuild Wikipedia. And it's going to be the same as today, but distributed a bit. And the idea is that you can create a logistic object and call it Wikipedia page. Inside you have a title, a description, some formulas, external links that we actually have in one record. So you could actually rebuild the whole Wikipedia in one record. And it's going to be distributed with different servers. Everyone could have his own, and it's going to work as it works today, basically. Now let's move forward. And I've talked about logistic object. I said how you can create them, all these analogies with Wikipedia. How do I get these logistic objects? How do I see them? How do I load them? I tell you that there is a URI, but how do I interact with them? Well, there is another analogy here. This is X or X Twitter. And you know, you can go on Twitter in many different formats. You can have it on your phone, tablet. You can create your own app to see Twitter or X. And how this is done? It's basically done via an API. If you go to the X developer platform, you have a list of API. And this API, they basically tell you how to post, how to like, how to change your post, repost something. This is everywhere. YouTube, LinkedIn, Facebook, they all have one API layer. In one record, we have actually the same. We have an API layer that allows us to interact with logistic objects. So once you create a logistic object, the API allows you to dialogue with the logistic object. And of course, you need to create the full server, but then you can dialogue with that. What are the possibilities here? Well, we can publish, so create a new logistic object, so a new page. We can retrieve, so get the information out of it. We can update them by a change request. We can retrieve the audit trail, an historical version, like I want to know the shipment 3 days ago, how it was. There was some changes between today and three days ago. Something changed, I can check that. And then I can verify a field, which is a specific thing about one record, is that you can ping the producer and say, can you tell me if this field is correct? I think this description is empty, can you update that? So it's just pinging the creator to basically change some stuff. Okay, so we said digital twin, logistic object, how to interact with the logistic object. Now we are going to introduce another important concept, which is logistic events. So logistic object, actually, they hold all the data. All the data is in the logistic object. Dimensions, IDs, and so on, they're all in the logistic object. But what about events? What about the shipment has departed, the shipment has arrived? How do I encode them in a digital twin? And this is where we have logistic events. Logistic events, they are document occurrence of actions. Something that happened, the ULD got destroyed, I can have an event with a timer. The ULD arrived, the ULD departure, you can name it. Many different things, and this is actually a visualization, but behind, there is that pure data that I showed you at the beginning. It doesn't change, it's exactly the same. Now you have understand a bit how it works, and we do another analogies for logistic events. Logistic events, they are like your bank statement. They are immutable, and they are an append-only log. What does it mean? It means that you cannot call the bank and say, I think this transaction was not 100 francs, I think it was 1 francs. The bank will say, no, I don't think so. Same here, it's immutable. Once it's posted, it's that one. And it's an append-only log, because it means that you cannot tell the bank to reshuffle your transaction and say, this transaction, I think it was before. The bank will say, no, this is the list of the transaction. Same here, logistic events. They are one after the other in an append log only. Last important thing, they are not free atoms. They're not that you can put a logistic event somewhere. They are specifically attached to a logistic object. And this is basically the order. So the logistic object defines the physical entity that received that event. So a specific shipment departed. And so you put that specific logistic event on a specific logistic object. Now again, how we interact with them, because it's nice to create them, how we do interact with them, and it's exactly the same as for logistic object. We have an API layer, even for logistic events. They have a unique ID, same as logistic object. The only difference is that you cannot create a change request for logistic events. And here we can publish a logistic event on a specific logistic object. We can retrieve a specific logistic event, or we can retrieve the bank statement in quotes. You can retrieve all the logistic events that are attached to a specific logistic object. Now again, we could recreate the whole banking system with one record if we would have a bank account logistic object and a list of events, which are your transactions, basically. Let's move forward. I think I have told you a lot about how to create a logistic object, how to create a logistic events. We can interact with them, very interesting. But in a messaging world, I just send a message to another person. I send all the data. He receives the data. I save it in the systems. It's done. How does it work in one record? Is it different? Well, it is. It is a bit different, and I think you have already seen this in YouTube and a lot of other social networks. They use exactly the same mechanism. It's called publish subscribe, and basically what you can do, you can subscribe to logistic object and get notified of everything that happened on that logistic object. Like today, when you go to IATA or to any other YouTube channel, you subscribe and you get a notification whenever you have a new video, or a new post, or a new short, actually. So you click subscribe. This is, of course, it's a UI for human, but actually behind there is a full API layer to do that. Same as you subscribe in YouTube, you can subscribe on a logistic object, and you get updates about the changes, updates about the events, everything that happened on that specific logistic object, you will get notified. But we go a bit further as well, because you know when you look at video, sometimes the content producer says, I see that you haven't subscribed to my channel. Can you subscribe, please? You will get notification about my channel. And in one record, we have the exact same thing. Each producer of logistic object can ping other stakeholder and say, I have produced this logistic object. I think you should subscribe to it and get all the information about it. So when you subscribe, you know the URI or you know the URL, you can put it in your browser, you can see all the information, and you will get notified when these information are changing, or when there is a new logistic event coming to the logistic object. Now, if we put everything in a row, I have another slides about notification, but that's fairly easy. Notification is like a YouTube video, each time a logistic object gets changed or gets an update or gets a logistic event, you will get a notification. Can be in your phone, can be in your tablet, can be in your system. So that's fairly easy to understand. If we want to recap a bit, I think we started from digital twin very far, how we encode physical into digital, how we do it in one record, so logistic object, how we interact with the logistic object. Then we pass through logistic events and how we interact with them. And then I explain you subscription and notifications, how we basically share the information across the different one record server. And of course, it's not really sharing the information, but it's giving the others the point to enter in our server and connect the information. Because that's how internet works. They don't send to you the website. You basically go and pull the website. So in one record, it's exactly the same. Now, I want to give you, I think you have now all the different concepts that they make one record. There are more technical details, but when you get the idea behind it, then the technical details is like learning a programming language. When you know how to program, when you know what is a loop and so on, then in Python, in Java, it's more or less the same. It's just technicalities. You need first to grasp the ideas, and then it's easy to go through. Here we have two resources. I didn't put a QR code, but they are the two main resources for one record. One is our GitHub repository, and the other one is our specification website. So in the GitHub repository, you basically have the history of one record and all our documents. There, it's where the community meets, basically. You can issue some bugs, announcements. It's where all the discussion gets placed, because even if we have our working group, whenever there is a decision, we put it back into the issue in GitHub. So if you want to collaborate on one record, feel free to get into GitHub, propose things, change stuff, change requests, pull requests, and so on. We are really working there with our community to make one record progress. Second is our specification website. This is basically where you want to go, where you want to implement one record. It's basically a list of things that you need to do in order to speed up with one record. How to implement the API, how to implement the data model, what are the security measures behind, the orchestration, the conversion between cargo MP or cargo XML and one record. It's all there. There's tons of material, with a different version of one record. You can get a lot of information there, and if you are willing more, you can always contact us. Another thing is tools. We have a lot of tools, but these are the three that I like the most, and I think they are the most important. The first is the visualizer. I think in the other presentation, people will show the visualizer, but the idea with the visualizers is to have a simple way to understand our data model, and I know that our data model is not easy. There's a lot of objects and a lot of properties, but this tool allows you to navigate it, like in a mega graph. You can go around, see all the different logistic objects, what are the properties, how they are linked. It makes it easy to understand how we use the data model. The second tool is the demonstrator, and the demonstrator is basically about get your hands dirty with one record without really developing it. You run it in your Docker, you get 3 servers and 3 different interfaces, so you can simulate a way where you have an airline, a forwarder, a shipper, or whatever you want, and you basically can see logistic object in a nice UI. I hope it's nice. You can exchange information, you can see how PubSub works. It's really done for you to test things and to get familiar with one record, because the first thing is when you see it live and when you try with yourself, you will understand how to deal with it. Last but not least, the test suite. The test suite is a tool that allows you to sanitize your implementation. Once you have understand how it works and you want to implement it, with the test suite, you can make sure that your implementation will work with any other implementation that we have about one record, so any other server. Inside, there are more or less 400 of 500 tests. They will test all your APIs, and they will make sure that your implementation can work with other implementation. And if we all run the test suite, we are sure that after, our communication will go smoothly. And then, last slide. Before thanking you, I have two different things I want to say. First of all, we haven't talked about security, but we have tons of security in OneRecord. The thing is that security is not really fancy, it's just boring, and has to be boring for a certain reason, because you don't want to make fancy thing in security. We use the usual standard procedure that any other website or your own banking or anything that you think is very secure, we use exactly the same protocol. So it's, for security people, it's the usual stuff. We don't reinvent the wheel. And the second thing that I wanted to say, back last month, I was searching for a coffee machine, an espresso coffee machine. And you know, you look a lot YouTube, and then you look a lot of blogs, and you read about it. And then I realized that what makes the product successful is the community. The specs are important, but up to a certain way, because then if you have a problem, you can always go back to the community and understand how other people have solved specific issues. So the community is key, and the community of OneRecord is you. It's you that you can collaborate with us, get into our working group, shows good practice, write your good practice, share it with us, share it with the community, and then together we can evolve OneRecords towards something even bigger than what it is today. So with this, I would like to thank you for being here, and I give the floor to the next speaker. I will introduce him. So our next speaker is Dr. Philippe Billon from Lufthansa Cargo, and he will speak about the real use cases which are super important to move forward, actually.
Thank you, Davide. By the way, my doctor I didn't promote in OneRecord, but in medieval history and medieval maps about 700 years ago. But that seemed to have qualified me perfectly 10 years ago for working at Lufthansa on EDI messaging. So take it from there. I'll quickly say some things about some basics, repeat, but Davide has, I think, given us a great introduction to the principles of OneRecord, and then go into the use cases. Because, of course, the standard is nothing without application, nothing with use cases. I'm going to focus on the four prioritized use cases of the Digital Leadership Board, but there are a million more, and we can later discuss it, or maybe after the session, so we can really go into the details. So, a lot of what I'm telling and a lot of the things that I will show are based on the work of the Digital Testbed Air Cargo in Germany, which was a state-funded project to facilitate innovation in air cargo. And as Davide said, collaboration is core here. The good thing is, whatever we do in the DTEC, whatever we do at working at the standard at IATA, it's open source. And I'm not sure if everybody has seen this aspect, because it's completely open. You can see every discussion around OneRecord, every decision made, every change was made is in a backlog on GitHub for everybody to access for free. This is super important, I think. For Cargo XML, Cargo IMP, you had to buy the manuals. It was more or less a closed shop. This is really open. And coming from the community approach, we thought that open source can really open the opportunity of collaborating, for example, with the Neon server. Neon server is an open source server software distribution. Like, for those who have a technical background, it's like Apache, where almost what most web installations are working on, that you can install on your laptop or on your computer or on your server, even in a Docker container, run it and try OneRecord without big efforts. And this is one of the outcomes of the DTEC. My colleagues are in the booth. They have a booth from Fraunhofer, and I would recommend to visit them, talk to them. You can get some deep insights there for free currently, which is great, I think. So, just a very quick recap. The 4 focus design principles. Piece centricity, super important, because that is the deepest level. Everything's built around piece centricity, although we know piece level handling is not available for many partners yet. It still works. You can still use piece-centric data structures, although you are not fully working on piece level handling yet. If we would have put it all on shipment level again, it would have the chance of getting better here and solving a lot of problems around the shipment or available-centric messaging today would not have been solved. So we are intentionally on piece level with a lot of aspects here. The physics-orientated digital twin is also super important because physics, the physical world, is what we all agree on, what we see, what we do align with. So the digital twin is the way to optimize the system. If you know very exactly how the piece looks like, if you have a good digital twin, you can optimize your build-up, your breakdown, your capacity planning, and everything. And that is deeply anchored in the system. Solving our today's problem is the approach to have a single source of truth. One data set just one data set, not copies of the same data set throughout the supply chain. If something is wrong with that, it needs to be changed by the source. That means there cannot, by the standard, there cannot be any discrepancies anymore between partners. And the 4th aspect is data-driven. It's not document-centric today. It's really data that is used for a special purpose at a point in time, but the data is what we are working on and not the documents. And with the audit trail, we have a perfect way to reconstruct when was the status at which time. So, coming to the use cases, one more aspect. The left side is the EDI world. The right side is the one record world. And as you can see, we can do a lot more. Coming from text only, we now can share all kind of data, like, for example, photos. If you are making photos with a smart gate, why not share it with your partners? Why not share it with the shippers? You have PDFs. We're going to talk about that use case. You can use IoT data like temperature, location. All that can be shared. One record is not about creating completely new data. It's about opening silos and sharing data that already exists. Not about buying 1 million devices and putting them on. It's sharing the data where the devices already exist. And that makes it so efficient. We're opening the data silos to synchronize our processes. Yeah, and also other fancy stuff like check sheets. I'm going to talk about it. So, forgive me, I generated some AI pictures. I'm also a little bit critical about it, but they are quite accurate in what I want to say. So I start the top 4 with number 4, and that is tracking. You all have, or most carriers, many forwarders have tracking APIs where you can get the status. They're usually generic, they're not standardized, they're working, all fine. So why do we have it as a prioritized use case in one record? And the answer is, it opens a communication channel from one party to another. It's not very complicated because it is more or less one-way communication. But once you have established that API, you can get into a dialogue with your partner to say, what do you need to optimize your operations? And then it's very easy to add new data types to the existing channel, because that's all defined by the data model. So once you have a tracking API online and you can use it, you can add photos, locations, temperatures, check sheets, additional milestones, whatever the customer, your partner wishes to optimize. It's all, and there is a good practice for that because we at Lufthansa did implement it a few years ago. It's on GitHub available. It, I think, very practically shows how to implement a tracking in one record with tangible examples, even taking the FSU messages as examples. And it also shows how to use data-centric data structures, piece-centric data structures, in a shipment-centric handling world. So that gives you, I think it gives a good guideline how to do it. And that is the step when you want to implement a use case. Don't start from scratch, because that's hard. For many use cases, we now have good practices. Look at them. It might not fulfill all your purposes, all your special requirements, but then we have a mechanism where you can say, hey, I see a problem here. How do we solve that? We can update it. Everybody's subscribed on it, so even the already existing implementations will then need to adopt, but it's a shared basis how to do things in one record. Good practices. So, top 3 is digital accompanying documents. And I've spent quite a lot of time in my early years at IATA talking about how to get things paperless, e-freight. We've done a good job with the airway bill. We also have some concepts, for example, for the DGD, but we still have a lot to do here. And there's a very easy feature in one record called the external reference logistic object, where you can link another object, a binary large object, like a PDF, to any object you have. Meaning, if a shipper needs to provide a certificate, he can attach it to the data set. There's going to be a link in the data that shows, okay, here is a certificate of this and this type, with this and this validity if you want, and then everybody in the supply chain can read it. And this will enable a lot more shipments to be paperless than we have today, with all the effects. The driver doesn't need to go to the office anymore. He can just drop off his freight at the airport. And that is going to help us to optimize our efficiency significantly. Yeah. Of course, this is a solution for things we don't use, where we don't use the data a lot, you know, like Kimberley certificates for raw diamonds. We just look, is it there, is it correct, and we're fine. For other, like the DGD, we might get a digital solution where we get the data. But this is not bad for all the rare documents, for the documents we are not using in our processes by content. So, top 2, yeah, that was the logistic object. Top 2 is the digital check sheet. The approach today is, for example, for RCS, is just to set a milestone when it was successful, which is okay. It's an absolute basic minimum. But how do we know that it was checked but not successful, or that it was not checked at all? And how do we know when is it going to be checked and where? There's no way to communicate that today. So what we did, we implemented a so-called check logistic object, which you can attach to any object out there. We didn't see a limitation. You can check a person, maybe even. You can, security status. You can check a waybill. You can check an address. You can check a UID, physical object. All that can be checked. So that was the approach here, to say we have an object that you can connect to any object to say, I performed a check. And not only in the dimension I did it, but also I want to do it at a point of time. It is planned, or it's estimated, whatever you wish, the standard timestamps you can use there. The good thing is, for example, the DG acceptance check, you can distribute, you can make it very easy to say the check failed or it was successful, giving you a little bit more information, but you can even do it a little bit more fancy, saying, I do link the standard IATA questions, but also specific ones of the carrier or at a special station. All these, the questions and answers will be available in real time, meaning if a check fails, at a GHA, the carrier will know in real time, and the forwarder and the shipper, if they are all subscribed, will know in real time what was checked and why it failed. And I think that's really giving us a lot of progress, coming from unstructured communication, like telephone, email, to very, very structured, not only root cause analysis, but also operational mitigation here. Yeah. And here I want to show you a little bit how the logistic object looked like, because that gives you more hands-on feeling of how one record works. The minimum is always a check and the total check result. If that's what you need to perform a check, and you see the check already has some meta information. This is, by the way, the ontology viewer. Niklas provided that mostly, which is really a great tool to see how one record works. And as you can see, almost all is optional. Of course, you don't have to show who performs the test, the check, but you can, if it's important for you, or if it's required for some tests. Yeah, you can say when it started, when it ended. You can, where it was performed, and then you have the total check result. If it's, for example, temperature check, you get a value back. Of course, it's 8 degrees. You can also put remarks in it. And then you have the template that was used. Can be, for example, the 2026 version of the DG acceptance check. You have a version control there. You have a name. You have involved parties. And then you have 1 to n questions connected. And to those questions in our case, for acceptance, can be provided by the carrier, for example, and the answers are then linked to every question by the GHA who performs the check. And that brings us a lot further, because as I said, when something changes, you can in real time provide an update. When suddenly you have to adopt in our ever-changing world that we're currently experiencing, you have new requirements. So then you can adopt in real time, and you will get the update in real time, also the answers. And you may say, I as in GHA, I do have an app. I can do all that on the plate, perfect. But that's different, because your solution usually then is not connected to the other partners. Meaning if the checks change, you need to adjust in your in-house system or your app to get it done. That is always, error-prone. It is work. This means really deep integration. It doesn't matter for one record if you then do the check, if your operation staff does the check in an app, or maybe the in-house system, or maybe you even have automated the check because you have a device that provides the temperature. So you can just, in one click, the check is going to be performed. So this is really back-end technology. In contrast to isolated solutions like individual app, here it's about data exchange between parties. So, top use case, you might be wondering, it's a shipment record. And that makes sense in a way, because we had a long discussion in the industry. Is one record, is the transition going to come from a replacement of what we share today already, like the shipment record, or is it going to be new features that we do not have today, like the digital accompanying documents or the check sheets? And the priority was laid on what we already shared today, which is okay, because once you have the shipment record implemented, you already have a basis for other data. You have a basic infrastructure, authentication, audit trail, all that you can then expand on. So this is the focus of the industry, to get the shipment record running. It does not mean you will not have benefits. For example, you will have direct communication without conversion in the middle between partners. You will have the best data model out there. So this already brings a lot of benefits, and at a later stage, for example, we as a carrier, when shippers are joining one record, we will only see it by the replacement of links that are today, where the piece information today is brought in by the shipper. In that link will one day be the original shipper's one record server. And so there's no additional integration efforts for us. When one record then expands, and the effect will be, we will have, like magic, better data quality because we even then get more data from the original source, and there's no transition efforts anymore for us in that case. So it's really the basis for getting one record, getting an infrastructure of one record going, and starting to improve from that. But as Davide said, it's all about collaboration. So if you decide that you want to do one record, focus on a use case. You know, that you can't do complete one record because the opportunities here are unlimited. So if you want to do digital accompanying documents, look for the good practice, if there is one. IATA is more than happy. I mean, there is transparency on that. And use it. It doesn't make sense to reinvent the wheel for everybody. And there are always different ways how to do things in such a mighty standard like one record. And in the end, to be interoperable, we need to decide on how to do things exactly for that use case. So look for the good practice. And then dive into one record. It's interesting. If your staff is used to security, modern security, OAuth, whatever, they will have it easy. But if you've only done EDI your whole life, it is a little bit of a change. But do not start from the one-to-one conversion perspective. Do not think one record is just cargo JSON. It's not. It's different. And that's where the benefits comes from. So when you've looked into the principles of one record and gotten into it and played a little bit around, then you're really ready to start. And the rest is about collaboration. Discuss whatever you find, your findings, your open questions in the working groups at IATA, because that's what we are there for. There's a good data model API working group. You can raise issues at GitHub. It's completely open. Your contribution is more than welcome. Yeah. And in the end, document, if there's no good practice, take one as a template, document what you do, answer the questions that you had to answer during the implementation, and share it. And I think it is highly appreciated if stakeholders in the industry do that. And hopefully they do get the reputation for that. And it's important. And I mean, you are the leader for that topic then, which is good. I think it really brings us forward and you can be part of that transition. Yeah. The good thing is, when we're all following these good practices, you implement maybe to start with one partner, but you can then use this use case for any party worldwide. So if you're a community system and you do implement a truck pre-advice, that can be used worldwide, without any adoption, without any specific integration. It really opens the field. And that is, I think, highly efficient. Yeah, that's it. That's where we come from. That's where we're going to. And there's a lot of information already out there. So I would encourage you, as I said, the Digital Testbed Air Cargo has a booth. My colleagues, Oliver and others are there to answer your questions, whatever you have. And we would be more than happy to discuss topics. And I left some space, so maybe we can also answer some questions later on. Thank you. Yeah. Going to announce? No. Are you going to announce, Niklas? Yeah, perfect. Oh.
Are we there? Yeah, okay. So we need to set up, because it's going to be a live demo. So we are going to attach the laptop. Then I will introduce the next.
And on this side, obviously. Yeah.
Go ahead. Yeah.
Perfect.
So our last speaker for the One Record training is Niklas Scheiber from Jump Cargo Systems. He will introduce you to One Record in action, so real live demo. So stay tuned, follow it, and then after we will have a Q&A so you can ask any question. Niklas,
Right.
the floor is yours.
First of all, big thank you for IATA for inviting me and to all of you for showing up. So, as Champ, you know us from, we make it a little bit bigger, either from the cargo management point of view, you know, our cargo spot solution for cargo management, but also Traxon or big CCS. So we cover more or less the whole supply chain of air freight and see all the deficiencies in communication between not just our own systems, but also systems of the various other suppliers that are in the market from all the different participants. So we also have a keen interest in optimizing that. For Champ, One Record really is a strategic move into the future to make our whole industry more efficient and more competitive. So while Champ is, I think, involved in One Record for the many, many years since its inception, I joined the One Record initiative in a previous life with the digital testbed project Philip just described. Back then, 3.5 years ago, I was working predominantly on simulation models. And that means that I had a 3D model of a warehouse where I had full control of the data that goes in and out of a simulation. I naturally used One Record to fill in that model and also to output data into One Record, and it worked like a breeze. Over the time, I became an expert in One Record. I'm now the chairman of the data model working group, supporting IATA, answering GitHub issues, and that's where then Champ came to me, hired me, and so I'm with Champ, and I got a first glimpse into the world, how it looks now. As you all know, the messages are quite complicated. We have lots of version issues, duplication rules, and common data quality issues because of that. Maybe a freight forwarder and an airline are on FWB version 17, but then the airline converts it down to versions I have seen, version FW3 or FW1, messages that were specified before I was born, in action in that industry. So something really needed to change, and I will bring that new spirit now to Champ. I brought it, and we are now in the process of really rolling One Record out. So let me start with this slide. So my personal vision, and also the vision of Champ, is that we use One Record for system synchronization. Christian Riege, in his talk, put it really nicely. One Record will be successful when we stop talking about One Record. It will just be there as some infrastructure that we use to synchronize our systems. We will, instead of shooting messages between, for example, a shipper ERP to the TMS and then to the CMS of an airline or CMS of ground handling agent, having message exchange bilaterally. Instead, we will have a One Record data set that sits in between. That data set is shared by a lot of all the different parties. They all have a stake in that data set in a decentralized architecture and can all work on that at the same time, in real time, all from their own systems, from their own graphical user interface, and it works like a breeze. In the end, for me, that's my best analogy. All of you worked on PowerPoint presentation with some colleagues previously. Earlier, we always had lots of different versions. You would just attach it to an email, send it along the next one who needs to look at the presentation. In the end, you had a big version mismatch. But today, we are working on SharePoint. Everyone has the same presentation at the same time. And for me, for One Record, will be exactly that. We are all looking at the same shipment at the same time, working on it in real time. Everyone is notified about updates instantly. Everyone always has the latest version. It's not just shipments. It can be flights, it can be truck rides, can be ULDs, can be pieces, can be anything. Everything is interconnected, and no matter the format that you use, you will always be able to synchronize from the same base. So let's have a look at the use cases. I think Philip already described a few of them. I think all of them, actually. We just used abbreviated terms. So first of all, we have the shipment record, which is essentially exchanging data that is today shared using FWB FHL data. In One Record, you can then make use, obviously, of expanded name fields that you can also do in Cargo XML, but you can also enhance that with even more richer data, which I will show in a bit. Then we have shipment status, shipment tracking, replacing, superseding FSU data exchange, and can be enhanced, obviously, with further timestamps. Then we have the on-record pouch, also called digital accompanying documents, where you attach PDF scans and PNG files or other binary large objects to one record. And in the end, as my colleague Nicholas Xenocosta said yesterday, one record and AI is a perfect match made in heaven. So I will demonstrate a little bit how that looks like in practice. So let's start with the real implementation of the shipment record. So you see my screen? Oh, perfect, that all works. So in the initial phase, I think all of our systems will still input and output Cargo IMP or Cargo XML. So the first step, if you're implementing the shipment record for the first time, you will be bound to these formats. So for that, we have a conversion engine, which allows you to convert that data into a one record data set, which you can then share using one record. At the same time, I will not show that today because it's not part of that graphical user interface that I'm using. You can output Cargo IMP back from one record. So the system behind that, I have to explain a bit, is a multi-tenant system, meaning I have the same graphical user interface. I have a set of namespaces, which are essentially all separate one record implementations. So for the players that are involved in that little demo are an airline, fictional airline, a freight forwarder, fictional freight forwarder, and a ground handling agent to just show the flow for a bit. So, as you know, FWB originates from a freight forwarder, so I will switch now to act as a freight forwarder and update the data to the freight forwarder data set. I think that you all know and love Cargo IMP, handwritten, added some piece level information to show the capabilities of one record. So I can just copy it in. In real life, that will be all done by API or some other connectivity measure like MQ. In the end, one record is a backend technology after all. So I updated an FWB. Then it's 2 house airway builds. Also upload these real quick. So first one. And then the second one. All right, so let's have a look. So all the data was successfully uploaded. And I can now look up the airway bill number that the data set was assigned to. Go here. You see, we're acting as a freight forwarder. We uploaded the data to the freight forwarder one record server, namespace, so-called namespace. We now have that data ready-made in one record. That is just an example how a visualization could look like. It's pulled the data directly from one record and filled into the fields akin to an ordinary airway bill. See all the different line pieces, the gross rates in kilogram. You have the rate information, and here you have all the different pieces that are accessible one by one in one record. And also you have here house airway bill 1 with 7 pieces, house airway bill 2 with 2 pieces. Now, once you have that data in one record, it's time to share that information with a different one record participant. In a normal flow, that's typically the airline, the carrier. So, as I said, in reality, it's all backend, it can be automated. I will do it manually using our tool. So, go to manage subscription. Davide presented it already. I will now say, okay, my airway bill has a lot of logistics objects behind it. I will now share it with the airline. The subscription was proposed and everything was completed. And now, if I change to the airline, they will also have access to the same data set. All right, further downstream the process, you might also want to grant access to the data set to your ground handling agent. The ground handling agent is normally not known to the freight forwarder. Sometimes it is, sometimes it is not. But for one record, we now have the opportunity that the airline asks on the ground handling agent's behalf to access that data. So maybe the airline forgot first. So at the moment, you see ground handling agent does not have access to that data set. So airline contacts the ground handling agent. They want to have access to that data, so they will request a subscription on behalf of the ground handling agent. So subscription was created, and now they go to the ground handling agent. You see, they will also have access to that data set. If you look behind the scenes, in the end, it's just a nice visualization. If you look at the data browser, it's the same logistics object that represented previously by my colleagues Davide and Philip. So everything is just a graphical user face generated from that. You can obviously build your own in your own TMS, CMS, or whatever tool you're using. All right, so now I have the data set up and running. The shipment is flowing, and we can now move over to the shipment tracking use case. Shipment status. So again, because I know at the moment most systems will just output FSU or FSU-like data, we also ingest that now. So we want to target freight forwarder, act on behalf of an airline. First, we create an RCS. Then we act as the destination handling agent, create an ARR. RCF. And then an NFD to fulfill that shipment. All right, so if we now go back into the shipment view, that one, you will see everything showed up as status events, meaning you can seamlessly track your shipment. Yeah, that's pretty much it for this use case. You can obviously define your own timestamps. We did that already in a pilot project with CCSJ. We will just enhance that, and everyone who understands these new timestamps will be able to read them, and everyone who does not understand them can just disregard them. All right, with the data set here now in place, you can obviously enhance that. That's also something that Philip presented. For example, we have a function here, because that's the sandbox graphical user interface, where we can add a mock IoT device to see how that looks like. Select a piece, it's just mock information, so bear with me. You can obviously create a connection to an API of a device provider. 5 minutes. And waypoints, and then we have it between Luxembourg, 5 and save that. All right, no, I'm in the wrong, don't have right for that, so bear with me. So I need to act on behalf of a freight forwarder to update that data set. Now create that, refresh that page, and you will now see part of the shipment is an IoT device. That's on the same flight between Luxembourg and Lima, which is fictional, unfortunately. Yeah. the sensor tracking. So that can obviously also be a real device where you can input real data. And the great thing about that is now, no matter on which behalf I act, I will have access to that data. So if I'm acting as a forwarder, it's my device, so I can see it. If I act as an airline, I can see it. And if I act as a ground handling agent, I can also see that data in one record. So now, at some point, the shipment might be fulfilled, and then you want to revoke access to all the different participants because they don't need to see it anymore. In one record, that's also quite easy. I will just act as a freight forwarder and say, okay, ground handling agent does not need access to that data set anymore. Remove their subscription and their access grant. That now means that ground handling agent does not have access anymore to the data set. All right, that I think pretty much shows how an integrated one record solution could look like. So now for the next part. That is the one record pouch or digital accompanying documents. As Philip said, the external reference mechanism of one record is quite powerful. It allows you to exchange pretty much anything. You just need to make sure that it is accessible using the same credentials, the same authorization and authentication than one record, that the one record uses. And then, again, you can seamlessly add in your CMS system or TMS system a viewer for a PDF file, and as long as you have access to a specific data set, you will be also able to retrieve that data set, that PDF file from one record, and add it to your own documentation. Really useful, not just for the documents Philip presented, like the Kimberley certificates for diamonds, for example, but also, for example, some claims. Maybe ULD was broken, fell down, there's like a scratch or something like that. One record allows you to just take a photograph, attach it to that shipment or to that ULD, and then everyone will be able to view that from one record and ideally from their own system. So for that, I prepared two data set. Let's check the first one out. Act as an airline. That airway bill now has a document attached to it. If I open that up, you see this PDF file is now accessible from one record. Seriously, that dataset was created by a different service from Champ called A2Z Scan, so actually the whole one record dataset was created from that paper file. So that's also something that we are offering. See, all the different pieces are the same as listed here, or with the same dimensions here. 5 at the first set and 15 of the last set, and you see that perfectly represented here in the piece elements of the one record data set. And now again, if you want to make that data set available to your partners, just subscribe someone else, for example, a ground handling agent, so that they also have the PDFs scan. And now, if I'm acting on behalf of a ground handling, as a ground handling agent, I will also be able to view and ingest that PDF file. And that's pretty much it. Simple mechanism, but extremely powerful. All right. Last but not least, I'm coming to my little agentic AI demonstration. So if we're going back to our original shipment, check the airway bill number again real quick. Yeah, that's this one. All right, you see, you have this image here in mind. So now we can also pull that information into one record. As Davide said, we publish our data model as an ontology. An ontology is a lot better than traditional means of publishing data models because it does not include just human readable information, for example, in a manual, and also not just technical information, for example, like a JSON schema, but instead it includes both. And if it includes both, if it's machine readable and human readable, it's perfect for agents. So I built a little One.io Connect agent, and pretty basic. It's spend more time actually installing Python on my machine than building that agent. Everything works like a breeze because one record is just so well made. So, first of all, we ask it what it can do. The way I implemented it is kind of like an MCP server. So if you're a little bit into building agents, it's just a basic ChatGPT model that has access to a set of on-record functions that I built. So it can fetch and display available information from one record, can explain details about logistics objects, can update objects, create new objects, and explain the one record ontology. So let's start with the one record ontology first. Now you see, it will execute a function and pulls the information straight from GitHub. And you see all the different logistics objects that have been presented before. The agent now knows about them and can use them in order to update a specific data set, for example. Now, let's look at real one record data. Please pull. I gave it the authentication credentials beforehand, so in reality, that's all safe and secure. And you see, it pulled the one record data set and gave me a nice little summary of that data set. Now, I see, all right, that's cargo IMP, so the name, for example, for the carrier declaration signature, which is my name, was shortened. I don't like that. In one record, I mean, that's not a real use case, but just for the sake of demonstration, I now want to have it updated. So I can just ask my model, please update. All right. Will now execute its function again and will automatically determine where to fill in that information and create a change request, technically using the one record API, and that will automatically accept it because we are the data holder. And you will see now in the graphical user interface, originally here my name is in this short version. If I reload that page, you will see that change now is reflected. And it's really not much code. The model determines most of that by itself just from the information given in the ontology. That's published on the web. You can access it for free. So let's go a little bit more in depth. Go back to my assistant. Please pull shipment and now the model again. It will take a while to determine how to access the functions. Okay, fetched lots of logistics objects because each and every piece is unique. You see all different pieces have ideas. All right, now in the process, for example, one specific piece I know about, I looked at that and I want to give it a specific ID. So I can now just ask my model, okay, I have that piece with this set of dimensions. Just ask, I have found the piece with the dimensions. Please add a bit of here to it. I also measured rate and it was 50 kilograms. Can you add this information to piece? And now you see it tries updating the data set. All right, says it was successfully created, then please re-patch this piece to check if the change is included. All right, so it says it has been updated successfully, so let's check in the viewer, reload again. And you see now, didn't work. So as I said, it's just a proof of concept, so sometimes you know it with agents, they hallucinate. I think it did so here. Try updating. Look, if it doesn't work, then I need to debug my agent. Oh, okay. In theory, it should work. Okay, then let's try something else. Please remove all special handling codes and add PGR to each and every piece. Just check if that works. Okay, my agent used the wrong tool, so bear with me. All right, so it did so for one piece. Check if that worked at least. Yes, you see, for that piece, it changed successfully the special handling code to GGR. So now, as Davide has presented, whenever a change happens in one record, there will be a notification to all the participants that have been subscribed of that data set. In that case, the forwarder modified the data, the airline is subscribed. So if we go to the main menu, you will see, all right, we just changed the piece. That, oh no, it was the previous change of my name, but because the airline is subscribed, they should, exactly, I received a notification here. Now, in a real production use case, that notification can be used to trigger, for example, an FWB export, or FHL export, or FSU export, or whatever other format your system uses. All right, that concludes my little demo, the last one. So if you're curious to learn more what our solution can do for you, you are free to scan our QR code. One leads you to an one record executive playbook I wrote together with my colleagues, gives you more in-depth explanations of the use cases that we are exploring. And on the other side, you will be forwarded to our page for One Connect. So if you're interested to start one record with a deeply integrated solution that we are having, feel free to reach out to us. And if you have any questions, no matter where you're coming from, even if it's technical, feel free to contact me, talk with me. I love talking about one record. I guess you noticed that. All right, then let's embrace the future together. Feel free to reach out to me, and thank you for your attention.
Thank you, Nicolas. I think it's always hard to do a live demo. I did it a lot, and I really want to thank you for doing it. It's always really hard to get on a podium and have different things going on, dev and so on. So it's super great what we have seen. So I would like to invite you two on the stage, and we have a quick Q&A. There are some microphones. I think my IATA colleague will help you. And the idea is mostly for you to have question that you have. Of course, there's no stupid question, everything, and it's your possibility to ask us about the slides. Everything will be available after the conference, so you don't have to do photos. I mean, you can, but everything will be available for you. Of course, the demo, we don't have a recording, but there you can see. But first of all, I want to thank you, Niklas and Philippe, for the presentation. It was super great. So, any question?
Thank you. First of all, thank you very much. It is a very exciting informational session. Thank you all for it. I have two questions. One is a simpler one. I'll start with that. The pitch that we started the discussion on is a comparison between the current peer-to-peer versus what the new directions says. And there was a concept, or there was a term used that there won't be data duplication anymore. We don't want data duplication. We want to have a shared model. So from a carrier point of view, if I just want to concentrate on a carrier point of view, and let's say I have a forwarder who is in the one record standard family, and I as a carrier am in the one record standard family. There are parts of the shipment logistics object that the forwarder owns. Do I need to duplicate it within my one record environment, or do I just keep going and I've got one, I use it, and then if I need it again, I just ask him again because I have the URI? What would you suggest? What are your experiences, and how do you see the industry going forward?
Well, to be honest, of course you have at a point of time to put the data in your TMS. Not every user that accesses the data set must trigger an update request to in one record or a fetch request. On the one hand, on the other hand, you can be sure what you have is actual because you have publish subscribe.
Correct.
Means you get notified when something changes.
Right.
But as a rule of practice, when you have a real important step, it might make sense ahead to check again if the data wasn't changed at all. But one record is always system-to-system communication. It's the user must not see that, doesn't need to see any of this. All he's going to see is that he has good data quality, better data quality when he's performing his step in the system. Yeah.
Okay.
I would
So
add something.
please.
Yeah,
carry on,
no, just a consideration more technical. Usually when you have two systems, what you do in the middle is a buffer cache. So what you want to have is a buffer cache on your end that gets invalidated whenever there is an update.
Yeah.
So what you do, you buffer cache specific logistic object and you give them a time. And then if you get a notification that the object has been modified, or you pull the logistic object again to see if it has been modified because we have a latest timestamp, you can get the new version and update it in your premise. Of course, we say single source of truth, and this is easy to do. You could actually pull all the time, but it's going to be a massive work. So you can always have a cache buffer between the systems.
No, thank you for that. Just to follow up on it, I mean, yes, we can do buffering and all that thing, but it has a direct link to the SOP that you do, right? As an airline, once I get the shipment logistics object, I would have to publish it to non-one record consumers, right? I have to tell customs probably that, this is the nature, this is what the shipper address is. And, right, is there any guidelines that way that one record standard uses? If I'm an owner of a specific object and certain attributes of that object, my supply chain SOP doesn't allow me to change it unless, there is an exception, process with it. So what I am taking away from it, and I just want to make sure I take away the right thing, that, obviously with all the great features it has, so many of them, for the current supply chain partners to operate with the SOP, we have to duplicate the data and put in certain controls on when to replenish my digital twin from some other owner. Is that right?
Well, I think it all comes down to a very easy rule. And that says, if you are exchanging data with partners, and that partner is using one record, you are never allowed to forward data itself, just the link to the data. If you
True.
take that into account, then you're fine. And whenever whenever a partner, when you're the first entry point, for example, forwarders are the first entry point today of the shipper's data. They take over the ownership for the data in one record, in the one record universe for the shippers, as long as they are not on it. But of course, if there are changes needed, if someone puts a change request to the forwarder, he might use his legacy system or his legacy channels to then align with the shipper if that is correct or not.
Yeah. No, I like it. And I mean, and that's where the vision comes alive. But till everybody is happily married and singing and dancing, we have the real transition. We will have some stakeholders who are one record compliant and one not. So there, I mean, till that time when everybody is singing and dancing, we still have duplication. Is that a reality that you've seen in your implementations?
I mean, that's how for example, when we build it, if we get one record, shipment record, and we have a GHA that is not on one record yet, he will get an FWB update whenever there's a relevant update triggered on the one record side. That is the bridge between the old world and the new world.
Okay. But if you and the GHA are both one record compliant, and if the GHA says this shipment logistics has departed, are you as a one record standard airline, are you going to be duplicating that departure? Or anytime you want the status on the logistics object, you're going to say, Mr. Handler, please tell me what is the status?
No, the right way here is that the GHA directly patches the milestone into the piece, and then we will get notified, like any other party that has a stake, because the GHA is the origin of the process information here, and the shipper is the owner of the object, and
right,
so it will just, why should we be involved here? Because we have nothing to add in this process as a carrier.
No, but you as a carrier may be obliged to give status updates to the forwarder, and the forwarder is not a one record. But you, even though you are one record compliant, you are forced to store that information so that the forwarder or the concerned may be requesting statuses. Is that right? Is that right? Is there a transition?
I mean, if the forwarder is not using one record, but between the carrier and the GHA is a one record connection, then we would get notified that the GHA has performed his step, and we would then maybe generate an FSU for the forwarder that is not using one record.
But you would also store, you in your logistics object would store that status, right? Because you will get APIs, non-one record APIs from partners in the supply chain that may ask you, what is the status? So at that point in time, you don't have to go back.
So if I may add something. So the way I see one record is that it is the synchronization layer. Obviously, you will have duplicated data in your own system, and you can do whatever you want with that. You can convert it to a customs format and then file it to customs. That will still be the place. But whenever you want to update your data set to be the latest version that your industry partners deem as the real thing, then you would look at the one record data set. So definitely you will need to duplicate information into your system. That's pretty clear. That's also, what I showed, right? So I think most of our systems originally will still output cargo IMP. We just use one record to align on what data set we deem at the moment to be the real thing. And we can always take a look at that when something changes. For example, you publish an FWB update as a ground handling agent, you can reflect these changes in one record and then every partner, be it the freight forwarder for some invoicing, maybe consolidation with the carrier, and the carrier will use the one record infrastructure to verify that this is really the latest version. But in your own system, you will obviously still have duplicates, and you will still be able to send these duplicates to participants who are not on one record. The end goal is everyone uses one record. And at IATA, if I have the last thing that I want to add, we actually have the data orchestration working group where we digested the MOP and added the steps that you need to perform in one record, if you're on one record, at what point in time. Directly comparable to messaging today.
Yeah. Thank you very much. I don't want to use, I have used a lot of time. I'll just stick with one. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Can I respond to that question? So one of the elements that we have currently in the process as a carrier, we validate. So we validate FSUs and we validate air bills. So anybody can publish anything anywhere, but in the end, in a current situation, we validate an FSU, yes or no is correct. It should have been sent. Is even there. An FWB sometimes we get FWB updates and then we block it at the points of acceptance. And even people can update it. We don't accept that. So how would that work then in a one record situation? Because then people start to publish new things and maybe want to send it around, which we will not allow. So how would that work?
So if I can start. So for that, we had the verification and change request mechanism in place so that whenever there is an update to a specific logistics object, the data owner can decide if they want to accept or reject that update. And they can also give a reason in the API response.
But that means that, so there's just a practicality. So I think you mentioned like the FSU update comes from the handler, but then the carrier in this case is the owner, because that's the one who decides if the FSU is right or wrong in this case. Do I interpret that correctly?
Yeah, that's something that could happen. Yeah, if the data set is just shared between the ground handling agent and the airline, then the airline can obviously accept or reject the changes the ground handling agent proposes.
But there's not much data, to be honest, that is shared that channel. Most data comes from the shipper. If he's not using one record yet, then the forwarder. The airline only adds some operational transparency to it usually.
But I think, yeah, it comes even back to, I mean, this is a technology. And of course, we have objects, we have, let's say, collaborative way to change the object, because the change request allows you to basically collaboratively define, I want to change something, a bit like in Wikipedia, and then the holder of the object, the producer of the data, can decide whether this is good or not. But of course, then you have all sorts of contracts in place and business rules that they add on top of the technology. Now, one record enables this thing. It's just how we use it, then it gets back to good practice, orchestration, and so on. So we might say that after, I don't know, FHL or RCS, the object is freeze, or you cannot touch it. Then the airline will reject all the changes that are coming around. We have done some work with customs, and we ask them, you want to pull each time all the data? And they say, well, we would like to have a landmark to say, to signal us as an event, the data are ready to go. And this is one record has a lot of functions, and as we see, we can do a lot of things. But then, of course, it gets back to the business process. And of course, today, the business process, the MOP and so on, they are adapted to messages, but doesn't prevent us to change them and adapt them to one record or to a data sharing model. So it's something that is evolving, and I don't know we have all the answer today. We will see how this evolve. You know, Cargo MP is 50 years old. You have evolved with a lot of things. And I think in one record, we will see why we have this milestone, why we don't have this other milestone, why we don't change things. So I think it's a learning curve, and it's future collaboration to make a better standard at the end.
So if I may add, so in a bridging scenario, that's, I mean, if you have probably figured that from my presentation, what we are working at, so where we have a world where there are some parties on Cargo MP and some parties on one record, you could even say that a rejected change request could trigger an FNA message. So that's also something that's perfectly possible, and for the transition periods, I think the way to go.
On the other hand, this discussion about freezing data comes, of course, from a mindset, you know, where carriers don't accept FWB updates after RCS, for example. But there's a value. I mean, if a shipper finds out that in his pieces, for some reason, he didn't put sausages, but explosives, we cannot say, no, we accepted it, leave us alone. You know, that might be relevant. And that's why we are talking about fully automated processes in one record. There are going to be, maybe there are going to be changes like the end receiver's address in the country might change a little bit from, you know, one warehouse to another.
Yeah.
That's not relevant. It doesn't mean anything for compliance, for customs. So that change is absolutely fine. But if it's rockets or if it's explosives instead of toys, then we should really take that into consideration. So we are never going, or there's no mechanism of preventing the data owner of changing his data anymore. We have the audit trail, so we can clearly say, when we accepted it, it said toys. You know, we can clearly, that's revision safe, but if there's a new situation, we can take that into account.
Yeah, I mean, just last thing is, I think it's like a, you know, a journey. We have specific things in place today because the technology that we use needs that. But with one record, we might see this kind of flow. I think someone was talking about pre-arrival and preloading. In one record, it's actually sharing the data. Whether this is preloading, pre-arrival is exactly the same. It's just the time and the amount of data that you share. So we can see like a continuum of sharing data and scam. And of course, we could put some guardrails on that. We can say, like, okay, if this happens, it's a no-go, it's a do not load or whatever. Or you can even embrace the new technology and see whether it can bring us.
Yeah, so it's within the context of the legal conditions and what you're allowed to do.
Correct.
That this exists, right? I mean, I'm not against sharing updates on what is really in the shipment, but there are some rules that we have to oblige by. And if we put something else during the flight, change the commodity, I tell you, we will have some shit.
No, but definitely there are rules. And, you know, sometimes even for technology, if we look back like 15 years, even a bit more, no one was doing cloud. Why? No one wanted to put the data on the cloud. I was in banking before, it was a forbidden thing. And after now, all the banks, they have their data on the cloud. You know, it's moving. The technology, it's kind of enabling things, and of course, the law takes much more time. But at a certain point, we can embrace the full technology with time.
Okay.
Any other question?
Well, I have another one.
Yeah, go. Sorry.
So you mentioned that the whole model is based on piece level, right? So when you do split shipments in your operation, that happen. Yes, it happens. And you want to update your logistics, events on the split. In theory, you should link them to the pieces that are relevant where this happened. But you don't know, because you cannot identify unique pieces in the current way of working. How would you deal with that? How you have discussed this?
I think you have an answer, or you want me to go?
Answer, but I also have an answer. Because that's currently a topic that is discussed in the working group.
Yeah.
So can either distribute it to the pieces, and that's definitely the preferred mechanism. At the moment, if we generate pieces from an unidentifiable mass, for example, if the original data set was an FWB, you cannot identify them by dimensions, like in my example, then you just arbitrarily assign events to specific subsets of pieces for split or for divide, for part. That is an option. So when you then pull all the events, you will be able to recreate the split information. A different way of looking at things, and that's what I'm seeing in different providers and their implementation, is that we add the split information to the events itself for a shipment, at least for transition period. That would also be, I think, more true to the source, because an FSU by definition is the status of a shipment and not of a piece. So that's at the moment a discussion that we have. Like inside Champ, I implemented both of that. Both is working. One has a lot more overhead. That's the disadvantage, but it's a lot more future prone. And I think at the moment we are aligning on a hybrid solution that will be good for both of that.
I mean, just to complement on that, I think we have things that we are still, designing, discovering, and that's where, I mean, Niklas didn't disclosure, but he's the secretary of the data model working group. So we have a lot of discussion, and honestly, it's growing, and we have different possibilities in one record. But the idea is really to find this together with the community, to understand what is the best. And it might be that at the beginning we take a path that is not correct. And we are there really to support and to make it live. POCs and all these implementation, they help us to understand what is good and what is not. I mean, in any standard, this work like that. I mean, we have 3 versions of USB-C. And
I wouldn't say right or wrong part, right? So from my point of view, there's maybe an ideal and a less ideal part, but as long as it works, it can be either way. We just need to align on something that's a standard. If it's not optimal, then, I mean, you still use cargo IMP, and that's far from optimal, definitely. If you just stuff more and more information into the OCI lines, that cannot be the future. We're still using that, right? That's definitely suboptimal.
Any other question?
Just one more on industry adoption. You know, when we had initiatives like e-Available, etc., well, IATA used to publish the batch maker, which was very useful for every stakeholder to see who's come to the standard, so that that batch could be made. Is there a similar one for one record that is being planned?
That's a good question. I think we will have a survey soon to understand the state of the industry. So you might get the survey, and we need to find the key people to answer the survey, because of course we have different views according to the people that we ask. But this is something that we are going to do this year, because from the 1st January 2026, one record is the preferred standard for data sharing, and we need to measure and start to have a pulse check of the industry. So we will run this, and I guess then we will publish the result. So yeah, it's something that is in the pipeline. Of course, we have many other things, improvement of the one record standard. There will be most probably a new release in a couple of months where we introduce more performance for the API, because we realize that when you have tons of pieces, we need to have something more performance. But again, it's something that we learn, and we get feedback, and we try to improve. And of course, yeah, we will do this exercise as well.
I may add, so all of you and all of your colleagues are cordially invited to join us there. So if you're implementing something, if you experiment something, have any questions, you can reach out to IATA, you can reach out to me, as my role as chair of the data model working group. And if you're having in-depth implementation feedback on a technical side or also on an orchestration side, you can just post an issue on GitHub. I promise you it will be discussed and will be considered for the next release.
Just thing that I wanted to add on GitHub, I didn't say it before, but we have a dashboard called One Record Adoption, and everyone that does or wants to share what POC is doing can create basically a card. This gets added to the board that we have, so you can see who is doing something, and of course it's on a voluntary base. But the more we get, the more we show that one record is live and we can do things with it. And of course, each and every POC that we do is something that we learn more. And if you get back to the community, then we can collectively discussing it and put it in our documentation. It's not a dead standard. It's not something that is freeze and we will not move. It's something that is evolving, and we know that they have parts that we can do better. But it's, of course, it's an iterative work at the end of the day. Any other interesting question? Again, is
Also, critical remarks are highly welcome.
definitely. We have still a few minutes, and it's your opportunity. IATA does 2 different courses on one record. We have one online, which is basically interactive, but it's e-learning to learn the basic of one record, a bit like what I show. And then we have another class, which is 3 days, I think, and it's in person to learn more about one record. And there we go a bit more deeper than what I show you here. It's mostly about APIs, data model, how to use it, change management, and so on. So if you are interested, you can contact me. You can tell my IATA colleague is all there. And and I think Philippe said very well, it's all open source. All the information that we have there on GitHub. So you feel free to get there, to collaborate, critics are really useful as well because we need to make it better. So very open.
Can you hear me? Just very quickly, on the airway builders, also notify other parties. Have you included that as yet in any of the pilots of, either banks or brokers or so on and so forth as you're going forward on this into a more complicated airway bill or airway bill record for notifications?
I don't know of a pilot that did that just yet, but it's perfectly possible. And I can now get really, really nerdy because the tech stack is interesting to do stuff like that. So for example, there was a project that was slightly related to One Record a few years ago. Mr. Hank Mulder was also involved in that. It was called Federated. And that combined more or less One Record for the air freight sides and then some other data models for sea freight, for rail freight, and for road freight, and provided a layer that's put on top so that participants who wanted to check out data from all the different transport modes using a single model could access that data then in real time. And that would, I guess, also be interesting for brokers and bankings. For One Record, I have to say at the moment, the scope is predominantly between freight forwarders, airline, and ground handling agents, and I assume it will expand from there in the future. Technologically speaking, there's nothing against that, right? You could evolve them if they're interested in doing so. We would be more than happy to support.
I mean, as I said in my presentation, we could rebuild some kind of Wikipedia or the banking system. The API and the security layer on top is agnostic to the object that you have inside. So today we have object for waybill, but we could have object for baggages, we could have object for contracts and so on. So it doesn't mean that if you want to add a new logistic object, you need to redesign the whole thing. The basic API layer will be exactly the same, and it's a bit like a USB-C. You can plug it everywhere that it supports USB-C. So if they support One Record, you can generate your own object. And actually, the way the data model is created via ontologies, I mean, this we get a bit technical, but you could actually expand the data model with a new ontology, or you could place an ontology on top and bridge together different ontologies. So the idea is really what actually in biology has been done as well, where you can have cell ontology, tissue ontology, proteins ontology, and you can map them together. It's something that is possible. It takes a bit of work, but we can extend One Record beyond the cargo, that's for sure. The idea is that today it's already enough work to focus on this, but if there are needs to expand it, why not?
Thank you.
One of the things that has always been a wishful thinking from the industry was as IATA goes through this continuous improvement of standards, the World Customs Organization has to be brought in, right? So when there was all last 6, 7, 10 years, 15 years, when we were going through transferring from cargo imp to XML, there was an initiative that was undertaken with WCO saying whatever standards we do in the transport domain, or the transport documents at that time we called it, the transport documents should be the same that is used for customs, so that each customs organization doesn't come up with its own standards. Obviously, when you launch One Record, there is so much synergy. If there is a conversation with WCO, they said yes to the IRXML, but things didn't go anywhere. It was very few countries that kind of adopted it, but everyone else was doing their own. Is there any synergy with WCO with respect to this One Record initiative?
So what I can tell you is we are working internally in IATA with our cargo custom working group to put out a guideline for customs. And the next step is really to start to contacting them and even WCO to understand, how the synergy can go. I think regulators are very important, any regulators, and this is, if they embrace One Record, even for a small POC, it will show that this is possible. And if they come on board, it's going to be much easier than to invest in this. So yes, we are looking at custom quite a lot, especially in the last few months. We have designed a full process and good practice for them. So now we are in the phase of validating with our working groups, and then we're going to present it to the custom and see how it goes.
Thank you.
Time is finished. Jonathan, you want to close? Thank you so much for being
Thank
here.
you very much.
Huh? No, you guys. You know the expression, dumbest guy in the room, dumbest guy on stage. Thanks. Just, you know what? I want to thank these three gentlemen, Davide, Nicholas, and Philip. Thank you. I was watching all of you, and I've gone to some of in my past career at an airline, I used to come to these things. It's evolved quite a bit, and it went to full nerd to people are starting to understand, and I think they've given really good examples, really good explanations. Every year, I'm seeing the type of questions, the amount of questions grow. And before I do thank the sponsor slide, I just want to offer a little bit of insight from the crystal ball that I have. In every journey, there's early adopters and there's laggards. It always happens. The tipping point till the floodgates open and we start seeing adoption towards critical mass is not 80-90%, it's between 15 and 18%. Couple of key insights that I want you to take home. A couple of years ago, we started working with Transport Canada to say, hey, let's get into this. Can we start? And of course, everyone's like, oh, we need customs at the table. Very recently, they stood up a One Record server of their own. Very recently, they sent out to the community, hey, we want to do a pilot. And I was blown away with the level of response. Everybody wants in on it. Not everyone's going to be able to. So I highly encourage you, in any speed and any capacity that you want to get started, there's a good community. There's good teams that can support you, reach out, and I hope that you've seen from today that it is possible, there's people that can help you, and there's partners that want to connect with you. So with that, I just want to thank again our host airline, LATAM. I think there is just a little bit of information on the networking break coming up. I want to remind everyone that the closing plenary starts at 11:30. I think this is it. Thank you for coming. We'll talk to you soon.